Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands we're joining from today.
I'm joining from Lisarow on the lands of the Darkinjung people.
And I am joining from the lands of the Nyungbul people of the Bundjalung Nation. We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. We acknowledge their deep and ongoing connection to land, waters, language and culture, and recognise that sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Welcome to Femmebot, the podcast powering women in tech. We're the founders of Crybaby Productions, where we create bold human storytelling for some of the world's biggest brands like Microsoft and Atlassian, helping them simplify complex ideas and truly connect with their audiences. And through our work, we've had the privilege of collaborating with some really remarkable women across the tech space. And Femmebot is our way of spotlighting their stories, how they got into STEM, what drives them, and what they're building next. And in context of that, I want to welcome Renee Wootton, who is a proud Dharawal woman, a trained pilot and an aerospace engineer, just to name a few little achievements. And she's currently the director of new market development at LanzaJet, and her work is shaping the future of aviation. And we are incredibly excited to hear her stories. Welcome, Renee. So excited to have you on our podcast.
It's a pleasure. I'm privileged to be here with you both. And yeah, like I said, love the work that you're doing. So I'm super happy to be here to contribute.
Thanks, Renee. So we read that you started in Air Force cadets at the age of 15. Can you take us back there and just tell us how you got started and where that interest came from?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the first in my family to have a career in aviation. I'm also the first in my family to go to university, so it's very much breaking ground for me and my family. I actually grew up on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. I was born on Dharawal country down in Campbelltown, but spent most of my childhood on Cubby Cubby country up in Queensland, and grew up on pineapple farms. I was shearing sheep, I was fixing fences, I was riding horses and breaking in like leftover horses that weren't good for, racing and the like, so weren't anything prestigious. We were very much like teaching the horse how to be ridden at the same time as learning how to ride. I grew up in the country, and I didn't have a very solid family background either. My mum and my dad kind of split early on, and that actually led to me leaving home at 15. And I went and lived with my grandparents and my auntie and uncle. And when I got there, they were reading the newspaper one day, and they found an article for the Australian Air Force cadets out of Taree Squadron in New South Wales. And they came home and said, hey, there's this great opportunity. Do you want to go along and check it out? And I think as a kid, I've always been incredibly curious and always said yes to opportunities. And so I said yes to this, and it changed my life forever.
Wow. What did it look like? Can you tell us what it looks like when you first stepped into that training?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went along and, I met a whole bunch of young people that were really passionate about defence or really interested in aviation, and also just really interested in camping and meeting other young people that love to explore. So when I got there, there was a real mixed bag of young people. And as I spent time in there, I immediately gelled with everybody there. And I also learnt so much about the world around me through that program. So one weekend was camping with, all of the paint on your face that you have as an army or defence person, and then climbing through the grass, and then through to walking around on different RAF bases across New South Wales and getting to see marching parades or aircraft that you could actually go up and climb into and feel and see yourself. And it was an intuitive feeling. I walked around aircraft and I just felt incredibly drawn to them. I can't tell you what it was, but as I got closer, I got to see them take off and land, and then I started meeting fighter pilots, engineers, people that had had careers in aviation or defence. I was just really drawn to it. And I remember sitting down one night at an officers' mess as like a 15, 16-year-old, and I had a fighter pilot sitting next to me telling me about his career, where he'd flown on the F-18, and I just thought, I am so inspired by this. I want to do what he's done. And so that really led me to driving hard, turning up consistently, and just being incredibly hungry to learn as much as I could about this incredible industry.
Did you at any point feel, sounds like you weren't intimidated at all? I mean, it's, yeah, straight in, but I feel like, was it because it was such an in real life experience for you right at the start, seeing the planes, experiencing them, meeting the pilots, as opposed to perhaps, you know, other people wouldn't be up close right away. It's more like studying university, and then experiencing that. Do you think it was maybe the way in?
It was so many different things, to be honest. I was always the kid in class in school that put my hand up to ask the stupid question, and I got used to doing that, and I didn't mind doing it because I always discovered other kids had other questions that were similar, or I helped other people learn because I asked that question. And so I applied that in almost every environment that I walked into, where I would get curious, I'd want to say yes to an opportunity, I'd get that opportunity, and then I'd ask those questions. So I would say I was quite shy and very scared of the world around me when I was younger, but I've always pushed through that fear, and I actually think that that has served me my entire career. I can't tell you where it comes from, but it's something I've always pushed through, is that fear.
And so can you tell us about your career? And so it started there, and just give us a very top line kind of overview journey of your career.
Absolutely. So it started at Air Force Cadets. That led me to choosing to study aerospace engineering. While I was on a camp, I went to Papua New Guinea and walked the Kokoda track, where I met students that lived and studied down in Sydney, which led me to then decide that's where I'm going to study. I ended up getting into a graduate kind of bridging course for the first year down there, because I actually didn't get the marks to get straight into the University of New South Wales. So I had to do a bridging course for a year, and then after successful completion of that, I entered aerospace engineering. Going through that course, I was lucky enough to get an internship at Qantas. I interned for 4 years with them before doing a graduate program. I ended up spending about 10 years at Qantas, and I worked in about 9 different roles over that 10 years. Throughout that, I actually left twice. The first time was by choice. I decided that I wanted to work for a tech startup and try something different. I wasn't feeling hungry enough, or I wasn't finding the job that was really inspiring me at the time, so I tried something new and realised, no, aviation's definitely for me. So I went back to Qantas, and then during COVID I actually got stood down. So again, I left the organisation. I went and worked for a defence contractor to upgrade simulators. From there, I realised that place wasn't for me, so I went to Western Sydney Airport, the new airport being built in Badgerys Creek. And then I got headhunted to go back to Qantas. And since Qantas, I'm now working at LanzaJet as the Director of New Market Development. So I've moved across multiple organisations, and I've also moved across multiple verticals within aviation business. So I started in engineering and worked in commercial strategy, people strategy, and now I work in customer experience and governance. So it's very different.
It sounds like you have really trusted your intuition and your gut throughout your journey, and you seem super confident in that. How did you know, like, it's from a really young age, obviously, to do that and not fear taking a step back to take a step forward?
I think, honestly, it comes down to the incredible people I had mentoring me from a very young age. I think that I walked in on my first day as an engineering intern at Qantas, and I got picked up by a man by the name of Robert Sullivan, and he just attended my wedding only last month. So he's been a huge part of my life since day one in my career. And I also had another incredible manager, Andrew Bartlett, and the two of these men gave me incredible opportunities. They always held space to hear what drama was happening at uni, in my love life, or what projects I had due. They opened the door on every conversation, and they backed me in every single situation. I think that led to, I got an opportunity, I think at 21 years old, to go and represent Qantas in London at British Airways and run a 6-week project on engine upgrades at the time. These things don't just happen, right? I think that it's because people saw that I was interested, they backed me for the opportunity, and I always said yes. I think that's the final piece.
I think what we're seeing across all of these podcasts is that kind of mentor. So, and I know that you obviously run a leadership program as well. What do you tell women, especially women that are trying to get into male-oriented industries? How do they find that mentorship? How do they find that kind of person that guides them and opens up those opportunities? Because we keep hearing that across all the podcasts, is that they really had a solid kind of leadership person that helped take them on the journey.
So first of all, what do I tell women that I see coming through the ranks? I think that you need support and a level of resilience in order to succeed, no matter where you are. You can't do anything alone. It requires a village of people, but you also have to back yourself. So for me, it's always been around those two support pieces, so that support and that resilience. In terms of finding people, there's so many different avenues and ways to find mentors, but I would say that the best and most incredible mentors that have formed my life and helped me become the woman I am today have all become or come about very organically. So the first two being my managers, then I found incredible leaders throughout businesses that I was working for, and I loved how they spoke to people. I loved the way that they led, and so I would go and ask them to go for coffees with me. I was invited to do a documentary a couple of years ago, and I ended up meeting an executive coach who ever since 2019 has just voluntarily called me, and I've called him, checked in almost, if not monthly, quarterly, and he still today continues to give me advice. I actually did a call with him like only 3 days ago, and I have a list of things that he reminded me to think about as a leader. And if you don't mind, I might share a few of them because I think they're just like such important life lessons. The first one, there is no judgment in what I say and what I do. So how I turn up to people and to meetings. Be careful of your assumptions. Assume good intent always. You don't need to solve other people's problems. And if the problem is big enough, they will come to you or they will get over it.
They're really good.
Yeah. So I think, a lot of my career, I've, come across people where I have values conflict or people don't treat you the way that you expect to be treated. And you can take that really personally. But sometimes it's not about you, it's about the other person. And how do you let that wash over you and move forward? So it's honestly been those conversations and those mentoring moments that have shaped the way I've been able to keep turning up.
I think the assumptions thing is really interesting as well because, and I'm so guilty of this, you don't know what kind of day someone's had, or most of the time it's got nothing to do with you. And I think that's, especially as women, I feel like we assume a lot.
Agreed.
We really need to cut that out and just come to the table with a blank slate rather than making assumptions on why someone did something. Yeah,
yep.
It's a real...
And not... I love the one, you don't have to solve other people's problems. I think as women, we're sort of conditioned to do that.
Agree.
Even raising kids, it's like you think that you need to solve the problem when you don't. And more what I'm learning is you're not meant to. Yeah. And I guess, why then do you need to do that for your colleagues or the people around you? It's like...
Correct.
Just learning that listening is enough.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and like you need to let other people learn that lesson for themselves and learn to stand up for themselves or learn to make decisions where they're empowering themselves. And I think, honestly, a lot of even the advice I give to young people is you have to back yourself, number one. Like, as much as mentors give you external validation, there has to be a balance between what you're told and how to turn up versus how you treat yourself, what you tell yourself, and knowing your worth so that when people do try and step all over you or give you the wrong advice, you know to let it wash over you. You don't let that define the moment.
You're obviously very confident, but were there moments, I think, when you did doubt yourself or your path, or did you feel like you didn't belong, because I think it's dangerous to just say, like, we're not confident all the time.
Yeah.
And everyone's not confident all the time as well. So
For sure. And I say that, with the complete appreciation that that's something you have to find almost daily. You have to re-find that self-confidence in a lot of different situations. So I would say I'm still not confident today. I would say I still suffer imposter syndrome. I still have conversations where I feel inferior to the person next to me. Like, I don't feel like I have the right experience to be in this industry. I don't feel like I have the right knowledge to be able to stand up and advocate for a position because I'm still learning so much, even in my role today. So imposter syndrome or a lack of confidence has genuinely followed me every single career step that I have taken. I think what gets me through that, or what makes me go for those opportunities irrespective of how I internally feel, is I have noticed almost every time I've made a move, or just through conversations with other women or men, everybody feels that when they move into a new role. So why would I avoid doing something if it's the human experience? It's just the way it goes. And
such good advice.
Even if you see a CEO walk through the door, you see someone super senior, that person is still human. They still have their own concerns, whether that's at home or internally, the voice that they're telling themselves. Every single person has this experience. So it's almost like choosing the pain that you want. It's the pain of regret or the pain of going through it and doing it anyway. And so when I realized that very early on, I realized no one's better than the next person. It's how well somebody can communicate or hide that in a way is the difference and the determining factor as to how far they get ahead in a way. There's a lot more to it. Obviously, there's capability, there's skills, there's knowledge, there's passion. But if you have the baseline requirements, you can be as effective as the person next to you, or more effective if you believe in yourself and push through the fear.
When you were coming up through the ranks, Renee, obviously you had some really incredible male mentors, but did you ever find yourself the only woman in the room or one of? And how did that feel?
Yeah, it's funny actually. I had a young girl in engineering talk to me just the other day. She said, "Do you find it weird getting managed by females?" And I was like, "I actually do." So throughout my entire career, because I've always been surrounded by men and worked for men, I don't know, again, I think it's character by character, person by person, but certainly there's a comfortability that I've built, and it hasn't mattered to me whether they're male or female in terms of who's mentored me or supported me, because of the industry I'm in, it's generally always been a man. So, and they've always been exceptional men doing exceptional things. It's funny because I've looked around the room or spoken to other women in engineering roles, and I can't tell you how diverse, but also how good my experience has been compared to other women. And I would say that's pure luck in a way, but also maybe working for the organisations that I have in the time that I have. Sorry, did that answer the entire question? Sorry, Claire?
It sounds like, do you think that that you're just being judged on skill and capability and I mean, which is what it should be, right? But it sounds like you're working with men who really are passionate about what they're doing and just want the best person working for them, right? And I mean, what is it you're saying? It is, your situation is quite unique though in this industry. So it's not the industry is just like, it's just a fluke. But can you talk more to that, I guess? So like your peers have found it a struggle, whereas, and I guess how would you advise those women in those situations?
So,
sorry, that should be a really long time to get.
No, that's so fine. I think it's not necessarily been my peers, it's been women in engineering generally. So whether it's, being a part of a survey or trying to be a member and participant in women in aviation networking groups, I've certainly seen it with my own eyes, particularly as a pilot, that women are undermined heavily in a lot of instances and challenged regularly on how they're showing up to work and managing caring responsibilities if they've got a family. And in the same breath, I have experienced poor management too. I think because I had enough support early on, or I still can refer to mentors today when I'm going through hard moments, I care less about how those people treat me or what their advice may be in a situation. I think that I have a lot of clarity around what's the right thing to do. So if you turn up to a meeting and you're holding true to good values, you're representing the company in the right light, you're putting in your best effort and you're communicating transparently, how much more can you ask for from a person? Yeah. People still make mistakes. You might say something that offends somebody by mistake. There's still the human experience that exists even when you intend to do well in every situation. So I think that I have been able to build enough self-confidence, build enough of a support circle that when tough times happen, I bounce back really quickly. And I think that's the difference. If you don't have that support network to rely on, when someone comes to you and says, you've done a terrible job, you should have done this instead, and isn't treated with respect or holds true to the values of that company, then that's on that leader, and they've misused that power, and their leadership opportunity was completely missed there. So I think that there's this level of, when I'm sharing all of this, I want people to recognize that you can only do your best. You have an opportunity to realize that where people aren't taking their opportunity to be their best, that's not your fault. And so how do you recover from that? How do you then get support to keep moving forward?
Yeah, amazing. It's really, message to everyone that is aspiring to be like you is that you need that rock. Throughout those tough times where you do doubt yourself, you need that rock to check in on your values and just make sure you were doing the right thing and you were staying true to what you believe in, whatever position you're in. Do you think, you're a woman, but you're also a Dharawal woman. Do you think that's played any part in shaping your direction and your leadership as well?
Absolutely, I do. I might just quickly cover off my confidence as well. Just to mention that I think because I grew up in a family where I didn't have my mum and my dad's support, I had to advocate and learn how to grow up very quickly, which meant I had a very strong sense of self, I guess, earlier than maybe other people.
And the resilience was there early.
Yes.
Yes, you
absolutely.
Can see that with,
Yeah, I had a lot of feedback very early on. You're very mature for your age, you're very independent, all those sorts of things. So I think it's through the struggle that the diamond was formed early, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's been an ongoing journey, that's for sure. Sorry, to come back to your question, Catherine, if you could repeat that one again.
Yeah, no, I was just interested because, whether your role, not just as a woman, but as a Dharawal woman, has played a position in shaping your direction on your leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe people don't recognize this or won't see this, but I had a lot of identity crisis very early on in my life, and I really lacked a sense of belonging. And I think that's because I am fair-skinned and I have an Indigenous heritage. And particularly when I grew up in the 90s, racism was ripe. I was bullied quite a lot through school. And I also had my family challenges, which meant that I actually wanted to step as far away as I could from my cultural identity because I didn't like the stigma associated to it, the bias, and just the bullying that I experienced. And that changed when I came to Sydney. So when I came to Sydney, I met for the first time in my life other people that had experienced exactly the same thing. And that was through a program called Career Trackers. It is an Indigenous internship program. And through that program, I was able to connect with and understand that cultural identity is incredibly complex. You don't need to prove yourself to anyone. And First Nations people are just as capable as any other person. The difference is that we have had 100 or 250 years of things going against us, which means we've, got a bit more of an extra fight to try and get to the same level playing field. So again, I actually think that First Nations people are even more capable in some instances because of this internal resilience that they've built and their ability to fight for what they want. And also this intuitive that they carry where they can see through people quite quickly and have had to confront really ugly situations enough that they can really feel out who's the person in front, are they being transparent and honest, and can I actually work with them and trust them? So it's quite interesting because I think that those are the qualities that have helped me then continue to grow as a leader. I think it's made me far more open-minded to cultural backgrounds and differences. I can understand or hold space for difference in the workplace or in community. I think because I grew up in the country too, that lens of if you walk into a country like community hall, for instance, people are probably going to be wearing flannels and thongs. They don't take themselves too seriously. Whereas if you walk into a community hall in Sydney, people have probably got heels on, they're dressed quite lovely, they've done their hair. So status is visible, right? And now on a global scale, I've kind of grown up in an era where globalization has absolutely taken off. So we're not just a nation anymore looking after each other locally, we're a global community now. And we need to think differently in the way that we approach problems and operate. So that means cultural identity, appreciating people for their differences, ideas and trying to hold space for people's different lived experience is more crucial now in leaders than it's ever been before.
What does that look like in, a really practical sense?
Yep.
Can you give us an example in your
Absolutely.
work life here?
An example would be working in Japan. Doing business in Japan, they're incredibly loyal business people and people generally, which means that once they've formed a relationship, they're very much likely to continue doing business over many generations with a particular business partner. So being LanzaJet, we're first of a kind technology. We're only 5 years old. We have huge opportunity to be able to share our technology with that global community. So we have to form relationships. We have to learn how to do business with Japanese people. We have to be patient. We have to understand the cultural nuance in the way that we speak, the way we write emails, the fact that they love doing face-to-face business over virtual, so we have to turn up in person. Be patient and incredibly on time. They highly value organisation, deadlines, and so if you miss something, that's it, your opportunity's gone, which affects trust and therefore loyalty. That's one, the way the Chinese operate versus the way America operates, the way Europe and the UK operate are all very culturally nuanced. We're working with Brazil, we're working with India as well. Again, regulations, standards, policy changes in all of these environments.
Why is it important for diversity to be a part of the corporate sphere? And, because you're talking about practically how you work with different cultures, but why is it important that we have, this diversity in all kind of industries?
It's such a great question. So diversity has been proven, first of all, let's talk to the science. It's been proven through lots of surveys that it increases our financial performance, how innovative we are. It improves the relationships in global economies. Your GDP grows. There's just so much benefit. And where does that come from? It comes from different lived experience. This applies more now than ever in the industry I work in, sustainable aviation fuel, right? In the Asia Pacific region, we have the greatest produce or feedstock available for sourcing and producing sustainable aviation fuel. However, in different regions around the world, they've got better infrastructure, or they've got better policy, or they've got different ways of going about and introducing financing systems. So all of a sudden, you can connect with 5 or 6 global communities and form a much better result because the experience and the capability is different in all of those pockets. So we would be silly to think that one country holds the best answers for every single project that we're running, and we can't operate that way anymore. We know this now. We have that tangible evidence. So now if we bring that down to a local municipality or city, again, you've got multiple different cultural identities within that. You've got people that have worked as engineers over in Iran that are now migrated to Sydney and working as taxi drivers. You've got some of the most highly qualified taxi drivers in the world sitting in Sydney, right? So let's think about that within an organisation. We can't expect that we're going to be able to deliver the best product to our customer or the most social impact if we continue to hire people that look like us from the same communities, from the same wealth. It's just not going to happen. So diversity makes sense.
So can we move, I feel like that's a perfect segue into what you do at LanzaJet. Can you talk us through what your role as Director of New Market Development actually means? And
yeah,
what
absolutely.
you do day to day?
Yeah, absolutely. So new market development is really business development, sales, customer experience. But because I work in the fuel industry, there's also a very heavy weighting towards science and engineering. So we've developed the first of a kind ethanol to jet sustainable aviation fuel technology. And that means that my job really differs day to day, a day in the life. A great example is today, starting a podcast with Fembots in the morning. Since I started work at 5 a.m. this morning, I've been working with the engineering and business development teams to build sales enablement assets. So what does that mean? It's essentially, how do I help our engineering teams, our business development teams turn up and have conversations to answer customer queries. So for example, they want to know how our technology differs to our competitors. So we've got to have really great competitive intelligence information stored and on a sheet ready for our teams to be able to read from. We've got to put licensing and engineering agreements together, which means that they need to be negotiating. So I've built a series of negotiation tactics for our team to be able to use live with our customer. This morning I've been developing a presentation for the executive leadership team to get buy-in for a project that crosses multiple teams across our organisation, for us to be able to paint the customer journey. So understand from that initial interaction through to delivering our technology and operating it, what are all the pain points through that journey? What services do we need to be supplying and providing to make that process more seamless? Last night, I presented at the World Bioenergy Association webinar and spent an hour speaking about our technology and answering customer questions from the Asia Pacific region and Stockholm. Actually, it was hosted in Stockholm. And then at the moment, I'm working on delivering our customer experience and regional go-to-market strategy. So customer experience is all around trying to measure our impact, understand what our customers need through every step of the journey, which can be incredibly technical. So we need to be able to explain our technology, like I mentioned, what the molecules are doing, how effective and efficient it is, through to what are our competitors doing and what makes them a more visible brand. And then when I speak about regional go-to-market strategy, it's how do we know we're going to set up, or what regions of the world do we need to know about? What are all the levers that affect the success of our projects? So I need to understand what infrastructure is in that economy, what policies and government support is available, what institutions are giving out funding. So there's so much opportunity, there's so much change, there's so much happening globally. It's all about identifying what's the greatest need for our business today and then setting up the teams to try and engage them on that.
Super exciting. Can you strip it back a little bit, because we haven't spoken about this, but can you tell people two things? First of all, what is LanzaJet and what you're doing in a way that you would explain to a friend in a bar? And also, who are the customers of LanzaJet as well? Because I think that'd be really great for the audience to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. So just for context, aviation uses about 100 billion gallons of fuel every year. And we emit approximately 3% of global CO2 emissions. So we need to decarbonise the industry, and almost every airline around the world is working towards a target at the moment, which is net zero emissions by 2050. So LanzaJet was born out of technology development, which was to convert ethanol to sustainable aviation fuel. So we are a technology licenser and sustainable aviation fuel producer, and we operate on a global scale. We currently have the first ethanol to sustainable aviation fuel plant in the world, based in Georgia, Soperton in the USA, and we have multiple projects announced around the world with incredible partners. So we haven't been able to achieve the success we have to date without our incredible partners. We have 13 partners that are core investors to our technology or to our business, and they span the value chain of fuel. So that is your oil and gas majors. So Shell is an investor for us. We have trading partners, airport representatives, airlines, original equipment manufacturers like Airbus, and so many more. So it's essentially any business that is working towards offsetting their emissions or purchasing sustainable aviation fuel to try and decarbonise their business. And Microsoft is actually an investor as well in our business. So, yeah, it's incredible.
This is probably such a dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. You know, when your commercial flights ask you to offset your flight,
yes.
Is there any point in doing that?
Absolutely there is. I'm so glad you asked that, by the way, Claire. Been trying to debunk this for our everyday consumer for a while. So what I think needs to be talked about is the fact that this is an emerging industry, right? So airlines around the world haven't got this solved for yet, but they are starting to invest and they are looking for solutions globally. So whether you're a low-cost carrier through a premium service carrier, in the Australian context, we've got the Jetstar through to Qantas and Virgin. I have seen incredible activity from those airlines to try and look at solutions to decarbonise. Now, in order to invest, you need a pool of funds, and you also need to provide education to consumers for them to understand where their money's going and how it's going to be used, right? So we invest, the more projects and opportunities we can look at to actually spend that money. So, for example, as a consumer, if you continue to tick the box to offset your emissions, that goes into a certain pool of money that goes into investing in projects in the Amazon jungle, for instance, or paying for sustainable aviation fuel trials or storage and supply of sustainable aviation fuel around the world. So Qantas is a great example of that. They've just recently received their greatest delivery of sustainable aviation fuel in Sydney, around 2 million litres, and they've also purchased it over in California in the US and in London in the UK. So the more consumers contribute, the more trials, opportunities and investments that airlines can make. So absolutely worth it. And it's an exciting space to be able to contribute to. Like, yes, it costs money, but also we're emitting emissions as consumers without really thinking about the impact of that, because it's been that way since we started flying. We also have to take responsibility for the emissions that we're emitting as individuals and how easy and accessible flying is. And it's also really nice to reflect on the fact that you're probably in the top 20% of the world that has access to flying. So you're emitting emissions which impacts climate change and people that don't have access to the things that we have access to. So there's a bit of social responsibility that's always nice to reflect on.
So
Shouldn't that just be shouldn't it be built into the cost, surely? Like, why are we given the choice? Shouldn't it be factored into the cost of the ticket?
I think there has a lot to do with economics. If you force the price of flying up, you lose a lot of your customer base, and that obviously affects shareholders and those sorts of things. So it's a delicate balance between people opting in at the moment, and I think one day we will see that that is mandatory and a requirement. But until we bridge this gap, which is again why more and more people should be investing in offsetting their emissions, is it gives us that ability to invest quicker and to see technologies like LanzaJets come online sooner.
Another fun one I have to ask you. Blue Origin, Katy Perry in space, what is happening? I know that you've got aspirations, right, to go yourself, travel into outer space. Am I right in saying
You are.
So, commercial space flights, is this ethical? Like, what are your thoughts?
I think that this is needed. So when you do trial commercial flights like this into space, it shows people what's possible, and it also gives investment to keep innovating technology. So I think when we send people up into space, we've run experiments every time. We've capitalised on the opportunity to grow consumer awareness or public interest in these sorts of things. So I think that you can't not get involved, get excited about commercial flight, because the opportunities far outweigh the sacrifice right now of maybe just sending people and burning fuel and it being perceived as careless or unrealistic for other people to get involved in. These sorts of opportunities educate people. It shows other young people that maybe that's a career path they want. They run experiments, so they get great data and great science outcomes from it. And I think the final thing is we gain so much benefit out of our ability to access space, whether it's understanding climate change, earth heating, weather patterns, which inform and help us then either help local communities recover from natural disasters or understand the weather that's coming their way and how to prepare for it. So they're just a couple of examples, but for me, my dream is to get sustainable aviation fuel into those rockets to make that less impactful on the environment. But absolutely support Katy Perry going up and all of the other incredible astronauts that also were passengers in that same flight. So it's exceptional to see women getting that visibility and also showing what career opportunities are available if you want them.
On that note, what advice would you give to, I guess, the younger generation of girls who are considering going into aviation?
Yeah. First of all, we need you in aviation, so please come and join us. It's absolutely a space for everyone, and we constantly aren't able to engineer the right future for ourselves in the industry today because we are underrepresented by women. 90% of the world around us has been designed by men, and we see that whether it's in healthcare, in automotive engineering technology, or in aviation and space. If you want the world around you designed for you, you need to be a part of that. And second to that, you don't need to be the smartest person in the room. You don't even need to like mathematics. If you have a dream or a career aspiration, you can achieve it. Yes, you need support to get there. You're going to need a bit of resilience to get through that math, but you don't have to just become a math nerd or a scientist in a lab, right? I hope that my career is proof that you can take any turn that you want and you can direct that based on your interests and your passions. So you don't have to be what the world around you tells you need to be. You have to be yourself, you have to be passionate, and you have to be hungry to learn. So hopefully that's enough.
That's really great advice.
And this is a question, I'm just going to wrap up because we could talk to you forever. So
I have so many other questions.
I know, me too, but I feel like
Part
we'll
two.
have to do a part two. We ask everyone this, how do you use AI in your everyday life?
Yes, artificial intelligence is so important for my everyday working life. A great example is we actually use it for competitive intelligence almost every single day. So we'll see incredible industry reports come out or tenders from people come to us, and we're able to determine what do we need to change in our language, in our approach to be able to provide the best tender in return, or to make sure that we're capitalising on market intelligence to be able to inform what tools and systems and priorities we have. So
Wow.
it's a huge part of our everyday, even down to negotiation tactics. I can't tell you how many times I have used it to inform how do I actually negotiate a fair outcome in this situation? How can I use techniques? So I don't know if anyone's heard about Chris Voss, and he has a book out called Never Split the Difference. It has been a game changer. But through artificial intelligence, I'm able to draw on the practices and the education that he's been able to provide, and it helps me have really robust conversations with customers or with internal stakeholders where I have to negotiate an outcome. It's incredible. I would highly recommend it. And it's so easy to use. ChatGPT, Copilot on Microsoft, there's just so many advantages to it, and everybody's using it. So the more you kind of resist or don't jump into that very quickly, because our world is moving so quickly, you kind of get left behind. So would encourage everyone to try and adapt to it as quickly as possible.
So
Any quick hacks that you have learnt for ChatGPT or for Copilot?
Yeah, so never trust the results that you get at the same time. So you have to be really good at picking out what's useful and what's going to be informative. So I always say that results that I get inform maybe anywhere between 50 to 70% of the final result that I'm looking for. And then it's the additional value you can offer as an individual with your peers, with your colleagues, to be able to get it to the 100% result that you're looking for. These tools also hallucinate. They're not always trustworthy. So you need to be able to scrutinize that information.
Thank you so much for being on our podcast. You're absolutely incredible. Thank you again for jumping on and talking to us.
Thanks, Catherine and Claire. It's such an honour.
So impressive, Renee. Thank you so much.
So impressive. Yeah.
Thanks, ladies.
So that's it for this episode of Femmebot, the podcast powering women in tech. If you liked what you heard, hit subscribe and share.